but in the end is so much bigger than politics. Whether you're left, right, agnostic, or indifferent, at its core, this is a story of injustice. It involves the usual players, protagonist, antagonist, big players and bit players. We pretty much know the who, what, where, when, and how. The fundamental question: on January 24, 2017, was Michael Flynn treated as per the rules like any other FBI target? The answer: a resounding no. He was treated differently, which brings us to the question, why? The answer to why brings us to an unsettling place, foreign to all of us who have spent our careers revering the American system of justice. It is that system of justice that distinguishes us from other countries. We are fair. We strive to achieve justice for all. No one is above our law, and no one is beneath it. It's why people clamor to come here, legally and illegally. As strong as the Statue of Liberty is in the harbor in New York, so also is a symbol of blind lady justice in courtrooms across this great nation. The facts of this story are simple. Flynn was in the crosshairs of the FBI, targeted by the same players who we already know from publicized text messages and emails tried to prevent a certain candidate from becoming president and promote another. They were dirty. They were liars, some under oath. They were leakers, and they were corrupt. Now, there's one important fact that you need to remember. The conversation Flynn had with the Russian ambassador during the transition was legal, perfectly legal. Take that one to the bank. It is what is done in every new administration. The setup? Michael Flynn was called by Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe and told that the FBI wanted to talk to Flynn about the Russians, and the quickest way to do it was to keep the lawyers out. A clear violation of protocol, White House rules, and ultimately Flynn's constitutional rights. Now, we know this because U.S. District Court Judge Emmett Sullivan ordered prosecutors to hand over FBI files of the Flynn interrogation instead of sentencing him as scheduled. 48 hours later, the files are handed over, as per the judge's directive, although incomplete and redacted. They confirm what Director Comey himself admitted and what the judge apparently suspected, that the DOJ and FBI hatched a plan to deliberately and intentionally avoid protocol, standard operating procedure in an effort to entrap Michael Flynn. Now, Comey even admits this when he pulls off the mask of Cardinal Comey to reveal the face of a hardened political operative who deliberately trapped Flynn. He not only admitted it with unfiltered hubris, he prided himself on what any other decent man of honor would have been horrified to admit: that the rules, the law, and the Constitution matter not when politics is at stake.
Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration.
Something you wouldn't have gotten away with in any other administration? So to be clear, the FBI went to great lengths to disavow Flynn of any concerns, telling him no lawyers need to be there. A plan that Comey, McCabe, and Strzok strategized, going to great lengths to keep even the Department of Justice out. And we now know that there were many arguments about whether or not they could and should do this. So you may be sitting there saying, hey, Flynn was a general. He should have known not to lie. You're right. You are right. But what is a lie? Is it a mistake? A misremembrance? A memory that simply doesn't remember everything? Or an untruth? And if an untruth doesn't require an intent to deceive to be a lie. Now, Flynn already knew that any conversation he had with the Russians was recorded and that the FBI would certainly have a transcript of his conversation with the Russian ambassador, so there would be no point in lying. Even more compelling, Agent Strzok and the other FBI agent who interviewed Flynn say he did not lie. Quote, both had the impression at the time that Flynn was not lying and did not think he was lying. They even said he was unguarded and friendly. The notes further described that Flynn did not give any indication of deception. Curious, however, is the failure of the FBI and the special counsel to provide the FBI's 302 of Flynn to Judge Sullivan. So how does the FBI file a false statement charge when the FBI thought it was no lie? And you're probably asking yourself, why would Flynn even plead guilty to lying when he wasn't lying? The answer? Flynn, based on his record of 33 years as a decorated military man, is an honorable man who may have realized when he saw the transcript that what he said was not consistent with the transcript. Or maybe he pled guilty because he ran out of money to defend himself, even having to sell his house to survive. Or maybe to save his son, also in the crosshairs of these people. And for those of you who think the FBI was just trying to get to the truth, you're wrong. If they wanted information, if they wanted the truth, they could have shown Flynn his transcript of his conversation to refresh his recollection to get at the truth. But no, they didn't want the truth. They wanted to take down a bit player to get to the big player. On Tuesdays, the parties will appear again before Judge Emmett Sullivan, a jurist unafraid of the swamp, a judge who has a track record of calling out prosecutorial misconduct, a man who does not tolerate injustice or abuse of power. Judge Sullivan can throw out this guilty plea if he concludes the FBI intentionally interfered with their target, Flynn's constitutional right to counsel. The story of Michael Flynn continues on Tuesday. And that's my open. If you like my opening statement, you'll love my book, New York Times #1 bestseller, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. And here with reaction to my open and much more, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, who joins me now by phone. Professor Dershowitz, thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much. I mean, the obvious point that everybody should understand is that the FBI didn't ask him these questions to learn the truth because they knew the truth. They knew the truth. They weren't trying to obtain more information. They were simply giving him an opportunity to lie. Now, he could have told the truth, obviously, if he remembered, but he didn't. But the idea is that I don't think in America we want to empower the FBI or grand juries or prosecutors to impose morality tests, criminal morality tests on citizens. Give them opportunities to lie, opportunities to tell the truth, test them. And as Judge Sullivan implied and as Judge Ellis said very clearly, the goal here was not to get Flynn, obviously. He's just a means to the end. Their goal was to find some low-hanging fruit, figure out a way of getting him to lie to the FBI so that they could squeeze him then either to sing or to compose. The obvious target here was Donald Trump, not Flynn. And the question is whether or not we want to live in a society, as a civil libertarian, I don't, in which the FBI, the grand jury of prosecutors, are empowered to conduct morality tests. I think the function of prosecutors, the function of grand juries, the function of FBI agents is to get to the truth. And so they should never ask anybody a question to which they already know the answer. The question, did you have conversations with this diplomat? The FBI knew the answer. Therefore, it was not an appropriate question.
But
the only
Professor,
reason
Professor,
for asking
can you
that
hear
question
me? Professor,
is to give
can you
him an
hear me?
opportunity to lie. And
Professor?
that's an inappropriate use of prosecution. That's why from day one, I said Flynn was not guilty. He could win this case. He should never have pleaded guilty. But because they threatened his family, they threatened his fortune, they threatened his integrity, I think he felt he had no choice. Also, if he pleaded not guilty and went to trial, he'd get 5 or 10 times the sentence he would get if he pleaded guilty.
All right.
And that's the way prosecutors often operate.
Professor, with all due respect, it isn't even the issue of living in a country where they can do a truth test on us. It's living in a country where the rules are followed. And so he was a target. He was being interrogated. He was not just not advised that he was a target, not advised of Miranda, not advised he was in their crosshairs. He was told specifically, you don't need lawyers. And Comey laughs about it and says, in any other administration, we wouldn't have done this. That's even worse than than someone who was just, forgetting about the truth and not the truth.
Look, I agree. There's no question that they should have gone through the White House counsel's office. They should have arranged a formal meeting. They should have told him that they're interested in investigating him. They should have told him that they had evidence that he had lied to Pence, that he had lied to the media. And now they wanted to show him the transcript and ask him whether or not this had happened, and can he explain why it happened. As you said in the beginning of your monologue, nothing illegal, nothing even improper about him talking to a diplomat. That happens all the time. And the question is, should they be rewarded for breaking the rule, or should Judge Sullivan impose a consequence on them?
Okay, but Professor,
judges often use good language like Judge Ellis did and criticize prosecutors, but they rarely throw out cases. So I'm anxious to see what happens in this case, because I thought that the disclosures made by the special counsel's office did not strengthen their case. They actually weakened their case. And I'd love to see the redacted material to find out if there's more information that either strengthens or weakens the case. But the judge has a good reputation. Let's see what he does. And this goes beyond Manafort. This goes beyond Flynn. This goes beyond Trump. It goes to what the appropriate role of prosecutors, grand juries, FBI agents are in a democracy that is bound by the rule of law. And this was a very disappointing experience, and the fact that Comey engineered it, laughed about it, and talked about how he could get away with it because of this administration certainly doesn't put the rule of law and the rule of the FBI in a very positive light.
All right, Alan Dershowitz, thanks so much for being with us. And I think we had some problem there with the professor hearing me. The mooch is waiting in the wings. Anthony Scaramucci still ahead tonight. But first, one of your favorites and mine. Governor Mike Huckabee pays a holiday visit to Justice. I'll talk live with the governor in a moment about Michael Flynn and all the things going on in Washington. Don't go away. Robert Mueller fighting back against Michael Flynn's legal team for suggesting the FBI manipulated Flynn into lying. Now, you just heard my open, and you also heard Alan Dershowitz right here on Justice say that he believes the FBI acted improperly. I believe they acted unconstitutionally. Let's get reaction from my next guest, former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee joins me now. Governor, good to have you back on Justice. Now, the return that was ordered by the judge in this case was, he said to Mueller, I'll give you 48 hours. I want the 302, or the FBI's report of what Flynn said to them. And the judge never got it. But what's curious is that when the FBI interviewed Hillary Clinton, that 302 was written on the same day, July 2nd of 2016. And when Hillary Clinton went to speak to the FBI, she was told to bring a lawyer. She was advised of what she was going to be speaking about. Do you think there's a difference between the way the FBI treated Hillary Clinton and the way they treated Michael Flynn?
Oh, no, not at all. Justice is blind. My gosh, Judge, this is just ridiculous. I mean, you've been on the bench. If you order someone to provide evidence to you, the judge in the case, and they don't do it, that's contempt of court.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how this continues to go on. You know, people like Donald Trump talk about this being a witch hunt. It is a witch hunt, but they're going after the wrong witch. They're going after Donald Trump. They need to be going after some of these people, including Hillary Clinton, as well as James Comey, who's 251 times can't remember a doggone thing before Congress when he's under oath, but he can go and sit there in his open jacket and be the toast of the town and brag about how that he got away with going in there and sucker punching a wonderful, fine public servant and military hero like General Flynn. It's disgusting.
Well, you know, so here's the question. We have this great jurist, Emmett Sullivan. Now, he suspected something was wrong, which is why he wanted those 302s. He gave him 48 hours. Now, he didn't get the original 302. What he got, for all our viewers, is the report of the FBI written 7 months later, where the FBI says the guy didn't lie. He didn't think he was lying. We didn't think he was lying. So the issue is, will this judge make a decision sui sponte on his own to vacate the plea, which Flynn has not asked for? And, you know, the amazing part of it is, if he does, then the house of cards of Robert Mueller falls.
It would be a tremendous act of justice on the part of the judge, Emmett Sullivan, if he would do that, because it would expose that there has been a stonewalling on the part of the government. And this ought to scare the daylights out of every American citizen. If our government can use its power to come after us and maliciously prosecute us for political purposes, then we don't have a justice system. We've got a third world dictatorship. And that scares the pants off of me.
You know, Governor, I want you to think about the fact that Michael Cohen pled guilty, and within the same week, he was sentenced. This Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pled guilty, I believe it was in December of 2017, and a year later he has not yet been sentenced. So some people could think, well, he's cooperating, but here's the thing. He wasn't charged with conspiracy, which would have implied that there was conspiracy going on with the president or with the Russians. And secondly, he didn't testify against anyone, which they could have used as a reason to delay the sentencing. There's something going on which is delaying this sentencing. What do you think it is? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think it's largely that they know they don't have a case. They sucker punched him, got him to plead to something because they scared him into realizing he was going to lose his house. They might go after members of his family. And he did lose his house, but that they would indict members of his family, that they would go and make his life an even worse living hell than they've already made it, and destroy this good man's career and reputation. And I think he just felt like he had no other choice.
Well,
he made sacrifices of himself for his family. What a shame to have to do that.
Quickly, before we end this segment, a Texas judge has ruled Obamacare unconstitutional, saying that the individual mandate, which was pretty much repealed by the tax law, requires the whole law to go down. Now, we saw immigration judges overturning some of the rules, some of the laws, some of the orders, and they affected the nation nationally. Now, this judge, does his ruling affect Obamacare across the nation?
Well, here's the thing. I think it ultimately will. I hope that it bubbles all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't think he could have ruled any other way, for the simple reason that once Congress took away the individual mandate, there was no tax. Therefore, there was no way for this to continue to go. I think that it will go to the court, the Supreme Court, and they'll uphold the judge. And Obamacare will be over. It'll collapse.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next few months. Anyway, Governor Mike Huckabee, Merry Christmas. Good to have you on the show.
Merry Christmas to you. Thank you, Judge.
All right. The war over the wall, Trump, Pelosi, Schumer, and the battle over immigration. How is it all going to play out? Next, the panel is primed for a spirited debate on one of the biggest issues facing America. Will it shut down the government? Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn are next. President Trump and the Dems are at a standoff on the border wall funding as a partial government shutdown looms. My panel's here to break it down, battle it out. Host of the Dan Bongino podcast, author of the new book Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan Bongino, former Chuck Schumer aide, syndicated radio show host Chris Hahn join me now. All right, guys. Right now, we've got the president saying that he's ready to shut down the government for border security. Is it the right thing to do, Chris?
Absolutely not. I mean, we have millions of federal workers and millions more who serve as federal workers who will have to worry about their Christmas. You talk about the war on Christmas. This is a war on Christmas by the president to threaten these people with their livelihood over a border wall, which, by the way, he was given a year and a half ago in exchange for DACA, but he'd rather have the issue of the border wall than the wall itself.
Wow. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Chris, do you notice how he did the pivot there, Judge?
Yeah,
he immediately goes to like, oh, that was impressive.
Fantastic.
Even for Chris. He's like, yeah, this is about a war on Christmas right now. Are you seriously making the case, right, that Donald Trump wants to shut down the government? He ran on building the border wall. People voted for him in the Electoral College overwhelmingly on building the border wall. The border wall is going to be $5 billion. All of a sudden, Chris and his liberal buddies who will spend money on shrimps on treadmill studies, all of a sudden he's worried about a $5 billion wall. Listen, hard pass on the nonsense. Stay focused on the topic. Don't get lost on the Christmas.
Now, Dan, I only went to one Trump rally. I know you went to many. I remember him saying, we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it.
All right,
so when the president gets his negotiation with Mexico done, then he can have his wall. We don't need a wall, but I'll take a free wall.
Chris, stop. All right, now I want to say something. You were totally wrong. He offered DACA to 1.8 million people in exchange for the wall, and he did not get the wall. You got that backwards. But, Chris, the fundamental issue that I want to ask you is it fair to have a wall or is it unfair? Should we have a wall? Forget about the shutdown. Should we have a wall?
No. We should have border security that does the job of border security, but we don't need a wall. It's a complete waste of money.
All right, I just wanted to ask the question. It was a yes or no question. Yes or no question. Hit it, guys, in the control room. I want him to hear
listen,
this. No,
Chris has never done.
Dan, I want to hit this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, guys. Right. Hit this on.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked.
All right, this is about hating Donald Trump. To hell with the American citizens. Your party said this over and over, and now because Donald Trump is in office, they don't want it. Go ahead, Dan Bongino.
Judge, the reason Chris doesn't want a wall built is precisely because a wall works. I have a very simple question for anybody listening tonight, Chris included. You're looking to cross the border illegally into the country, not legally. Do you want to cross where there's a 20-foot reinforced wall? Or do you just want to walk across the border? Chris will never answer that question honestly because he'll dance around it because he knows the answer. The answer is you want to cross where there's no wall. Why? Because we're reasonable people and it's easier that way.
Dan, I know you've been busy with the book tour, so let me just spell it out.
No book.
90% of people that come here illegally overstay their visas, and a wall is not going to stop that. They come here on planes,
so we should let the other ones in?
They come here legally. That's what it is. Now, what we're saying about
he didn't answer the question?
He never answers the question.
He never does.
What was the question?
Chris, Chris, I'll answer any question you want, I promise you. If you can answer me a simple question, and don't humiliate yourself in front of the whole Fox audience. Do you want to cross the border where there's a 20-foot reinforced wall or where there's no wall at all?
Oh, if I have a 25-foot ladder, I'll cross where there's a 20-foot wall, Dan. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question,
Let me
Dan.
ask a question.
Was
That's
Mexico
enough, guys.
supposed to pay for the wall or not?
Be quiet.
Because
Chris,
get
stop.
Mexico to pay for the wall.
I'm not going to have you. Come on, Chris. I want to ask a simple question now. In the end, if the president has already identified, and Border Patrol has identified 600 gang members, and I believe that there were also 10 individuals, I'm not sure what it is, who have been charged with felony crimes. 76% of the Americans agree with the president. Why is this such a problem for you guys when you philosophically agree? It is Donald Trump that you hate, and you don't care about the American citizens.
I do not hate Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump could get Mexico to pay for the wall, he could have it. And I think they should be stopping felons from coming into this country. I think they should be stopping people from coming into this country who mean to do us harm. But that said, a wall is a tremendous waste of American dollars. That's why the president said Mexico should pay for it. And I agree with that part.
Dan, enough of the Mexico stuff. Dan, last word.
Tremendous. You notice how he still hasn't answered the question. The question, Judge, was simple. Do you want a wall? Do you want to cross where there's a wall or not? When you look, Judge, by the way, at the sectors of our border where walls have been built, illegal immigration crossing is down dramatically. Chris is allergic to facts. He was vaccinated against them when he's a child. It's tough for him, facts and data.
Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn, thanks so much. A Justice exclusive, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar joins me next.
A day after a Texas judge strikes down Obamacare, President Trump's calling on Congress to pass a, quote, strong law that provides great health care and protects pre-existing conditions. This while Democrats vow to appeal the ruling.
Plus, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke out, joining the growing list of administration members leaving at the halfway mark as President Trump announces that Mick Mulvaney will be acting White House Chief of Staff once John Kelly leaves at the end of the year.
And there's still no deal in Congress to fund President Trump's border wall, but the clock is ticking, and there are now just 6 days to go before a possible government shutdown. Welcome to America's News Headquarters. Today in Washington, I'm Jillian Turner.
A cold, wet Saturday in December here in D.C. and negotiations ongoing, 6 days to a possible government shutdown. I'm Leland Vittert. There is major fallout today from a federal judge's decision to declare Obamacare unconstitutional. The ruling coming hours before today's deadline to sign up for 2019 coverage. Here's what you're going to find when you log on to healthcare.gov. A message in red saying, quote, the court's decision does not affect this season's open enrollment. That said, this could affect 17 million Americans who are part of Obamacare and so many more who have private insurance as well. Lauren Blanchard here to break it down for us. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Leland. Well, the law will remain in place for now. Now, despite the ruling, even the White House has said they know appeals are coming. Here's what happened. A conservative federal judge in Texas, Reed O'Connor, ruled the Affordable Care Act invalid because he says when last year's tax bill eliminated the penalty for not having coverage, it knocked out the constitutional foundation, and the judge says Obamacare cannot be separated from that provision. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who initiated the lawsuit, says the judge did the right thing.
The taxing power of Congress upholds all of Obamacare. Well, now that the penalty was taken out by Congress at the end of last year in the tax reform bill, the taxing power issue is gone, and therefore the individual mandate falls.
The Democrats have a different view, I think, than I can say.
And the president and his administration was quick to cheer the decision and call on Congress to pass a replacement. The Democratic Party, which will control the House in just under 3 weeks, is calling the judge's decision one of the most dangerous and consequential attacks on the Affordable Care Act ever. over. And likely future Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi is saying if the 20 million Americans who have gained health insurance under Obamacare lose it, it's on the other side. Quote, Republicans are fully responsible for this cruel decision and for the fear they have struck into millions of families across America who are now in danger of losing their health coverage. A Fox News poll shows, according to Americans, 33% of voters approve of the way the Trump administration has handled health care, while 56% do not. And if the lawsuit makes it to the Supreme Court, as many think it will, it would be the third time the justices consider fundamental provisions of Obamacare. Twice before, Leland, it has been upheld.
And now we have a very, very different court than we did those two times. Lauren Blanchard with us on that. More throughout the show, including reaction from members of Congress. Jillian?
President Trump's on Twitter this morning, as he is many Saturdays. He's excited about the new Obamacare ruling coming out of Texas. Ellison Barber has the latest from the White House. Ellison?
Hi, Jillian. Yeah, President Trump is doing somewhat of a victory lap when it comes to the latest ruling on Obamacare, tweeting that it is great news for America and something that he, quote, predicted all along. He then went on to tweet, Congress must pass a strong law that provides great health care and protects pre-existing conditions. Mitch and Nancy, get it done. But Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi says voters want to keep Obamacare, and she pointed to midterm successes among House Democrats as evidence of that. Healthcare is far from the only issue on the president's mind right now. There's the fight over the border wall and the potential for a partial government shutdown, and now more staff changes. President Trump announcing this morning that Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke will leave his post at the end of the year. Zinke has been the subject of multiple investigations related to travel habits and potential conflicts of interest. The Interior Department's Inspector General launched an investigation into a real estate deal that involved a foundation set up by Zinke and a development group backed by the chairman of one of the world's largest oil field service companies. Sources say that Mr. Zinke resigned. The president says Zinke has accomplished much during his tenure. The top Democrat in the Senate says the swamp will be a little less foul without Zinke. Zinke's departure is one of four major shakeups since the November midterms. Last week, the president announced that his chief of staff would leave at the end of the year. Budget Director Mick Mulvaney will replace General John Kelly as acting chief of staff. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, is leaving her job. The president is hoping the Senate will approve State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert as the next UN ambassador. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, of course, resigned in early November at President Trump's request. Mr. Trump later announced his plans to nominate former Attorney General William Barr as Sessions' replacement. All of this has led to rumors and speculations about a chaotic White House with powerful, coveted jobs that most people in D.C. seem to not want to take on. The president pushing back against some of those rumors, those suggestions, particularly when it comes to the chief of staff position. He tweeted that many people wanted that job and then added that he believes Mick Mulvaney will do a good job. Jillian?
Ellison, thanks for breaking that down for us. Leland?
All right, and with that, we bring in GOP financier and fundraiser Dan Palmer from the West Coast. Dan, good to see you. You think about this now. You've got Zinke out, Pruitt out, and Price out, all, shall we say, under fairly swampy conditions. Does this make it harder for Republicans as they try to push this narrative that the president is the one who's draining the swamp and his administration is going to be far different than the way so many others have operated?
I don't think so. I think we live in a world of accelerated change, and the White House is certainly not immune to that. The most significant change is the president has grown into the job and has more clarity as to who will be effective carrying his agenda. You know, I can't think of, maybe there's one example where the replacement wasn't an upgrade from the original holder of a position. But in general, this administration continues to move to greater and greater competency piece by piece. So I don't buy the narrative at all that this is a case of disarray or making it harder to govern. I don't buy that at all.
We were told by the president that he was going to only hire the best and the brightest. So does he need a do-over on a few of these?
Well, let's look at the chief of staff position to begin with. When Trump came into office, he was new to government, and he was, in fact, just finished a hostile takeover of the Republican Party, winning the nomination, winning the presidency. He was not a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and so he hired Reince Priebus, who was the RNC chairman, as a bridge to the establishment in a hope to unify the party, and also as a channel of communication to fellow Wisconsinite Paul Ryan. Largely Reince failed in that, and so he brought in General Kelly to calm the waters in the White House and stem the leaks and get the trains to run on time, and he generally succeeded. But the job of the next White House chief of staff is to prepare this president to enter the 2020 cycle in better shape than he is today, and that involves fighting with a democratically led Congress. Mick Mulvaney is highly qualified, so I think in each instance the president has reached out to the tool he needs.
You think about Priebus, who, by your admission, was really a failure in what he was brought on in terms of being the bridge to the legislative branch to try and bring in more of the president's agenda. General Kelly, for whatever order he brought to the White House, still, in terms of being able to deal with Congress and get things like repeal and replace of Obamacare passed, get immigration and border wall funding passed, both of those have come up as failures. Now you've got Mick Mulvaney, who's going to also have to deal with a Democratic Congress that is really hostile when it comes to investigations.
No, I agree, but General Kelly did bring order. He did stem the leaks, and they were able to get the tax deal done, and they were able to get a couple of judges confirmed to the Supreme Court. So they did get some things done. But this is an entirely different regime now. Kelly was presiding over a single-party control of government and trying to unify the party. Now it's combat. It's combat with the House led by Pelosi. They're going to be investigating and trying to keep the focus on a series of what really amount to political mistakes, not legal jeopardy, and try to sully the president with all that. Mulvaney, I think, is certainly capable of fighting that fight.
To your friends, fellow fundraisers, donors, what is their big concern about the next 2 years? If President Trump and Mick Mulvaney can't do blank, we lose in 2020, speaking as a donor. What is the blank?
I think the issue really is, to what extent will these investigations, whether they're conducted in the House or through Mueller, what will ultimately shake out? Is there some criminality that really touches the president? So far, we've seen that people like, the ones who have been indicted and so forth, those are crimes unrelated generally to the president. Certainly, they've been brought against these parties to add pressure to them to testify, to try to box in the president. But so long as he stays free of actual criminal culpability, I think he can get back on message and go to the voters with his vision for example, border security, his vision now for free market-driven, personal freedom of choice healthcare. These are the things that I think resonate with the public, and I think he'll meet with some success.
Well, as we heard from Lauren Blanchard, Obamacare is actually more popular right now in polls than the president himself. Dan Palmer from Los Angeles. Dan, thanks for getting up early. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Leland.
All right, Jillian.
Now more on our top story this morning, this new ruling by a federal judge out of Texas. He's ruling to overthrow President Obama's signature healthcare legislation. But even without this latest development, Leland, enrollment numbers have dropped.
All right, so here are the numbers. At this time last year, more than 4,678,000 people signed up on healthcare.gov. This year, those numbers are down nearly 12%. So as we head into this next year and in light of this court ruling, what exactly does that mean? Healthcare expert, president of GDP Advisors, Seth Denson, here to break it down. Seth, we know that the Trump administration have not exactly been fans of the Obamacare bill. Does that have a lot to do with these numbers being down, or is it because as unemployment has dropped, more folks are getting their health care through their employers?
There are a number of things I think that are impacting this. No doubt those that support the president, those that are opposed to the Affordable Care Act in general, are likely not enrolling. But in large part, that's because there's more options now. The president has come out in support of and expanded access to things like short-term health plans and association health plans. But as you alluded to, the economy's up. When the economy's up, people have jobs, and many Americans get their health care through their employer. In addition to that, about 81% of those that do access the individual marketplace under the ACA are doing so through a federal subsidy. When the market's up and joblessness is down, people make more money, and now those people may not qualify for a subsidy any longer.
Now, Seth, what about the confusion that, you know, some of this is ultimately going to sow in the industry, in the healthcare industry, in the market for consumers? What are your predictions about the impact this has? You know, the Trump administration's trying to minimize things by saying, you know, open enrollment's not changing, we're sticking to the timetable, but you can't try and tell me anyhow that people are not going to be confused.
No question there's confusion. There was confusion throughout the year when we really didn't understand what Congress was going to do, what funding was going to be there. Confusion has been at the center of this entire story for the past 12 months. That said, the benefit of this announcement from the judge in Texas today is that it's coming out on the last day of open enrollment. So many people have already enrolled. A number of those policies that are out there auto-enroll. So once those people just don't do anything, they're going to be automatically enrolled in whatever they had last year, assuming that plan was still in place. And so as we progress and as we move forward, it will be imperatively important for Health and Human Services and the White House to be very clear on message as to how this is going to impact not just Americans accessing the federal marketplace, but those that are getting access to health care without pre-existing conditions as well.
You've got the president out there tweeting that Obamacare is unconstitutional. I knew it all along. So many Republicans are sort of dancing on this judge's decision. Yet, as Jillian points out, the administration is saying, no, everything's continuing as